Hey, how are you? I'm Sean Tracy. I'm the director of Black Hat, and so many people, including my mother, have been asking me all these different questions about how we made Black Hat. So I figured I'd put together this quick little, maybe 10-minute making of movie, just so you can get an idea of what our process was like. Um, so a lot of people have made comments, some positive, some negative, about the look of Black Hat, which as you can see on the right, the finished product has this kind of a graphic novel cartoon look. And we kind of planned this from day one. Black Hat was shot entirely on green screen because there was really no other way we could shoot a western. And I was inspired by the look of the Dark Tower graphic novels. I think they had a nice low light look to them with a really nice color palette. So I decided I wanted to do something similar to that in style. So when we decided to shoot green screen, we kind of knew from the beginning that our finished product was going to have this graphic novel, cartoony look, and and as you can see, what we were looking for when we were in production was a nice low key lighting on our subjects. So basically, we started back in November. Toby Osborne, the writer, and I started discussing things about how we would do this. We've never met before. We still haven't met, actually. We've never even spoken. Um, Only collaborated through emails from about November when we started speaking till about March. As I was wrapping production, we sent hundreds of emails back and forth discussing how we would shoot it, making some script changes so that it was possible to shoot, uh, going over different headshots and figuring out what actors we were going to use, things like that. And we really wanted to kind of capture the essence of the Amazon Studios idea of collaborating. So not only collaborating with each other, but we set up a website, and the hopes was that people go to the website. We filmed our casting call. We compiled them into videos. We posted them on YouTube so that people could come and watch through the videos and kind of give us a hand casting, let us know who they thought was strong actors, and we got some pretty good results. So we wanted to kind of keep a pre-audience involved in the making of the film all the way through, and then it wasn't my plan at first, but I decided after the first rough cut was done, even though it was just the green screen without any kind of compositing, that I would upload it so that people could kind of get an idea of what a film looks like in its most raw, kind of ugly form, and then how it would change over time and evolve into the finished product. And we're happy to say that we're done with the film now and about to upload it for the next month's competition. So a lot of people have been asking me about kind of what gear we use and things like that. So here's some of the stuff we used. We shot Black Hat on a Canon 7D. About 95% of the footage was done with the 7D. There was one day where I forgot to change the batteries. Luckily, the DP Derek had his T2i with him, and because they both have the same crop factor and they shoot 1080p, we used that for a few scenes, and the look is basically identical. You wouldn't know the difference. And the T2i is a slightly lower price model than the 7D, so you'll get if you're looking for a good camera and you want to go with HDSLR, T2i is a good choice. There are a couple of options that you don't get with it that you'd have with the 7D, but either is a good way to go. As far as lenses, my DP really liked the stock lens, which I don't like because it's a slow lens, but we use that for most of the film, and we also use a 28 millimeter, a faster lens. We had to have a lot of lights because we were shooting green screen, so we needed to keep the screens well lit, and then we needed to keep our subjects. We had this low lighting look that we wanted for them, so we used a lower lighting kit. My DP had this really nice softbox, which acted as the key light for most of our scenes, and I also bought some other crappy softboxes, and they turned out that they melted because they were made for cool fluorescent bulbs, but the cool fluorescent didn't match what we were looking for, so we put some tungsten in there, and yeah, they melted. We had two giant green screens. They were 10 feet by 20 feet. Um, and we used them for both the floor and for the screen behind. And then when we had to key out separate elements in a shot so that not everything could be green because there were things that needed to be keyed separately, we used a blue screen for those elements. To capture audio, we use the Zoom H4n. So if you're shooting with something like a Canon 7D or T2i, they don't have XLR inputs, which means if you want to be able to capture some good audio, you're going to have to do it separately with something else. So the Zoom H4n allowed us to do that with the shotgun mic. The only problem is then you've got to sync everything up in post, which could be a pain, but it's worth it. And for the most part, the camera was locked down on the tripod. We didn't want to do too much movement just because then I would have to do a lot of tracking in post. But we did there's probably like 3 shots in all of the film where we used some movement. And to do that, we used an Indy Slider Mini. And if you're not familiar with what a slider is, it basically is this piece that goes on top of your tripod. Then the camera attaches to it, and you can slide the camera back and forth for kind of limited short-range tracking shots. Usually left to right would be better than in and out, because if you go in and out, sometimes you'll see part of the slider. For post, I cut it in Final Cut Pro 6, but the bulk of the work is done in After Effects in CS4, and then at work, I'm a teacher, we have CS5 there, which was very handy because there were some shots where the green screen wasn't lit well, so I needed to go in and I used the Roto Brush tool in CS5 to separate our foreground and background elements, so that came in handy. A lot of the work for backgrounds for the outdoor shots were created in Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator, CS4. There are some 3D elements that were made in Cinema 4D. And then originally my plan was to kind of create all these backgrounds from scratch using Illustrator. But it really didn't work well. It was very time consuming, and luckily I found this program called Daz Studio, which at the time was free. I don't think it's free anymore. But it's a 3D program, and I got some good 3D backgrounds, Western style things like a saloon and a sheriff's office, things like that, that made it a lot easier for me to go into post and kind of create these 3D backgrounds. I also use Compressor, part of the Final Cut Studio package, to render out my final product, and my sound guy, who basically did all the audio, he did the Foley tracks, cleaned the dialogue tracks, and then created a score. He's working separately from me, but I'm almost positive that he uses Logic to do all his audio work. So that's what kind of gear we used and software we used for production and post-production. And I got a few more questions from people kind of asking me how the compositing works. So here's one of my favorite scenes in the film. It's where Monroe walks in on the outlaws who are just taken over the cat house, and he's there to kick them out. So basically, my footage comes in. I shot in 1080p, only I edited in 720. And the reason I did that was that now, because I have this scaled down footage, I can kind of do my own camera moves in post that I wasn't able to do on the set. I can do pans, I can do tilts, I can do kind of slow tracking shots in for some effect. So basically, I bring the shot in, I would mask out, kind of do a rough junk mat around, my characters here. And then we would start doing the basic keys. So in this scene, we have first we have the green key. So you see it gets rid of the green. After that, we did a key for the bed. Now, in this situation, we were kind of rushing because this actor here, Pascal, had a very kind of limited time he was able to work with us. So we were rushing, and you can see that the blue screen here is not lit well at all. There's tons of shadows and black here. So if you're shooting green screen or blue screen, this is a problem. These areas that are black won't key out. So you see, I could only pull the blue colors out of here, and the black stayed. Um, so there were a couple of scenes where I had a problem like this, but there's always creative ways to work around that. After that, sometimes I apply kind of a simple choker if it's needed. I'm just going to bump up to full resolution here so you can see the scene a little bit better. But this one was pretty clean, so it didn't need it. I usually do my color correction after, and if you notice, there's not a big. I didn't do a ton of work as far as color correction. After that, I would go to a separate program, either Cinema 4D or DAZ, and I would render out my backgrounds. So in this case, here's the background plate for the room. You can see things are starting to shape up already. Still a big problem here though with this bed. So I would render a bed separately, and that's, the improvement is starting there. Then I would light the scene, and as you can see, we were going for a low-key look, similar to the Dark Tower graphic novels, where a lot of times, you'll have one side of the face is well lit, and most of the other side of the face is in shadow. So when I would light backgrounds and scenery, I would try to somewhat match that. So here we've got two different lights to try to kind of change the look here. And at the end, I would add a camera. And sometimes, like I said, I would do camera moves, and other times I would kind of just use the Wiggler, which is a kind of like a plug-in in After Effects, and I would set the camera up so that it kind of looked like someone was holding it, kind of doing handheld camera work. So the whole, if you notice, it's kind of, you don't want it to be obvious when you're doing camera moves. You don't want to detract from what's happening in the scene. So it's kind of very subtle, slowly shifting camera movement. And then the last thing I would do is use a plugin from Red Giant called Tune It. So yeah, I didn't. It would be really impossible for me to sit here and kind of do a self roto tune by hand. That's something like they did on films like A Scanner Darkly, and I don't know, there's some kind of crappy commercials on TV, some kind of insurance company commercial, something that use that look, where they hand draw the animated look. Obviously, too time consuming for a test movie, so I used this plugin and fiddled around with the settings to kind of give myself the appropriate cartoon look that I was looking for the film. And unfortunately, all of these things together are pretty render intensive. So some of these things took a very long time. And if anyone's wondering, which you're probably not, I did work in the ProRes 422 format for the film. So one more time, just jumping back to this kind of opening thing that was playing here. So you can kind of see here our befores and our final result, which took quite some time. So every scene took quite some time to do, between doing all that masking and keying, and then getting the lighting correct. And yep, it was a long process, but we're finally done. So if you get a chance, definitely head on over to the Black Hat page and take a look at the final movie. And if there's anything that I didn't cover that you're interested in knowing about the film, let me know. Drop me a line, ask me a question. I'll try to answer it. Thanks for watching.